Hello, everyone, and welcome to Blogging Theology. Today, I'm delighted to talk again to Dr. Abdullah Sueidi. You are most welcome, sir. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. Thank you very much for having me here.
You're in Medina, I understand.
Yes, I'm in Medina, alhamdulillah.
Fantastic. Good stuff. I'm in London. So for those who don't recall, last time Dr. Abdullah was a guest, he is a Swedish convert to Islam who holds a PhD in Islamic theology and is a specialist in topics related to atheism. He has been teaching in Al Masjid and Nabawi and the Islamic University in Medina and has been active in teaching Islam in Sweden for over 15 years. Dr. Abdullah has kindly agreed to give us a talk today about the occult and Western esotericism in the light of Islam. Now, I admit to knowing very little about this subject, so I'm particularly looking forward to learning about it from an Islamic perspective. So over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. I have a presentation with me. I'll just see how will I.
Okay.
Yes, like that. Yeah. So, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wa salatu wa salam ala ashraf al-anbiya wal mursaleen, nabiyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in, amma ba'd. The topic that I'm going to talk about today is Western esotericism and occultism in the light of Islam. And the purpose of this presentation is to give an introduction to the subject, like you mentioned, Paul. Many people, they don't know about this subject, but it's like you will see, it's a very important subject when it comes to understanding Western thought, understanding Western culture, because it's very influential. And it's also very important to show another side of the West. And I will speak about that later, because this is it's very influential in the West generally, and many people don't speak about it. So the West usually presents itself as very modern, rational, scientific, materialistic, and so on. But this is another side of the West, and it's very influential and it's very important. So I will speak about that, and I will also speak about how we can learn more about the subject, the academic research on the subject, and then I will give an explanation of the Islamic position of different things that are common in Western esotericism and occultism. First of all, this word that they're using, it's a new. It's not been used for such a long time. It's called Western esotericism. So it's only about the traditions, the esoteric traditions in the West, in Europe and in USA, and it excludes esoteric traditions in other parts of the world, like esoteric traditions in the Islamic world or in Hinduism and Buddhism and so on. So this is specifically about the West. Esotericism, it's a Greek word from esoterikos. It means the inner circle. So you say esoteric, it's something inner, and exoteric, it's something outer. So when you speak about an esoteric meaning of the text, you speak about the deeper, the hidden meaning of a text, and you speak about the exoteric meaning, it's something outer. So esoteric is something inner, and it's usually secretive, and it's hidden from most people, and so on. So how do the scholars define Western esotericism? This is one of the longer definitions that I mentioned. Western esotericism is used as an umbrella term for a wide variety of historical traditions that were traditionally neglected in academic research. So it's an umbrella term used by scholars and researchers. So you will not find people that say that they are Western esotericists. So this is not a term used by these people themselves. It's a term used by scholars and researchers who have been studying this subject. And it has traditionally been neglected in academic research. So if you go back to scholarship before the mid-20th century, you will not see that scholars have specified or spoke about this subject specifically in academic research or in books or articles and so on. But it started in the late 60s and the 70s, and it really started to be famous in the English-speaking world in the 90s and now in the 21st century. So it's something that is very new, but the subject that they are studying is something old.
Mm.
It includes Gnostic, old Gnosticism, Hermetic ideas, and other theological currents in late antiquity, and also the occult sciences like astrology, magic, and so on, and also Jewish and Christian Kabbalah, theosophy, Rosicrucianism, Illuminism, occultism, spiritualism, and all of these other subjects that usually and today New Age movement and Neo Paganism and these other currents that we can see now that are quite influential in Western culture.
I just want to say, you mentioned the theurgical currents in late antiquity. I've just seen on the dictionary there, theurgy, I think it's pronounced, is the operation or effect of a supernatural or divine agency in human affairs. It's one definition, or a system of white magic practiced by the early Neoplatonists.
Yes, I was speaking on the later, inshallah. Yeah. Theurgical currents. So to summarize, it's an umbrella term used by scholars that they try to find something that can describe all of these things together. So in the end of the day, you will not find that people in the late antiquity used to speak about themselves as Western esoterics, or that occult people or New Age people describe themselves as that today. But this is a term used by scholars. Occultism, the definition is occult theory or practice, belief in or study of the action or influence of supernatural or supernormal powers. So all the kind of things where people try to connect with supernatural powers, usually the jinn, like sihr, magic, and divination, and sorcery, and even astrology and other things. These are all things that are under the umbrella term of occultism. Even occultism is a new word, but it hasn't been used for such a long time, but nowadays it's used in the academia. So what is esotericism? If we can see the two main currents in the history of Western thought, we have the Greek rationality or Greek philosophy, and we have dogmatic belief Christianity. And esotericism is somewhere in between those. So Greek rationality is based on things that can be verifiable, that you can verify it, and like modern science today is based on these principles, that if you want to speak about something specific, you have to verify what you can speak about. Of course, there were different Greek philosophers, and they were speaking about different subjects and so on, but this is the main thing, that you have to verify what you're speaking about, and it's not just dogmatic belief. You have to criticize everything, and you have to try to find the conclusion based on rational thinking. And the other thing is dogmatic belief, and of course religion like Islam is based on rational arguments for the existence of God, and that he's the only one worthy of worship, and the signs of prophethood and so on. But in religions, there are some things that are based on dogmatic belief, that you just have to believe in them based on what the messengers and the prophets have said. So like go to some of the description of paradise and hellfire and so on. We believe in it just because the Prophet ﷺ told us about it, and just because it's mentioned in the Quran and Allah has already revealed it. So it's not something that can be verified by others trying to look it up through scientific methods and so on. So you have Greek rationality and you have dogmatic belief, And esotericism is not part of the philosophical tradition, the Greek philosophical tradition, even though they take some things from Plato. And it's not part of the religious dogmatic belief. It's somewhere in between. And it's usually based on experience and not on authoritative scripture, nor on like rational arguments. So it's things that you have to experience yourself, and it's things that transform you as a human being when you experience them, and it's usually based on secrecy too. So esotericism is usually spread in secret societies or in smaller groups, and you get initiated to the group by experiencing some specific things through rituals and so on. So in this way, esotericism is not a part of the Greek rational, the philosophical tradition, nor the Christian or Judaic tradition. Yeah. Anything? Do you have any question about these things and so on?
No, not so far. Very interesting indeed. I like the contrast between those three particular groupings as you described them. Very interesting.
This is something mentioned. I studied a course in the Swedish University. A scholar, his name is Henrik Bogdan, and he's one of the most famous scholars about Western esotericism. And he mentioned this three, like the three different systems that they have in Western culture. And also, esotericism is called rejected knowledge, because the things that you it has been rejected by the church, it has been rejected by other philosophers, and it's been rejected by modern science, and it has also been rejected by the academy itself. It hasn't been studied. So it has been rejected in many ways, even though it has been very influential amongst different thinkers and different societies, and even politicians and people that have a lot of influence in culture and so on. But it's not something that you speak about. It's not something that the West usually show about themselves. Like usually when they try to portray themselves, they portray themselves in one way, but you can see at the same time some of the greatest Western thinkers, they have been dealing with these things in private or in different secret societies and so on. So this is one of the interesting things that I think really has to come out and we have to speak about, is that we have this front side of the West, or the way that try to present themselves, and at the same time you can see many of the thinkers and politicians and other influential people, they have had, at the same time they have been indulged in these esoteric societies or different occult things and so on. So
this is particularly interesting what you're saying here. You say that Western esotericism shows another side of the West that is not usually presented, and even though it's pretty widespread, you say, and hopefully you're going to be showing us examples widespread amongst scholars and thinkers in Western culture. And I can't help but remind it, because I don't really know anything about this subject, but for my own a little bit of reading, is someone called Isaac Newton, the great English scientist, discoverer of gravity and optics and so on. His secret passion, and he was passionate not because he was involved in the occult, but because he had to keep his religious interests secret, because he was technically a heretic. He did not believe Jesus was God. He understood that some of the early Christian manuscripts had been corrupted, a Trinity verse had been added, and so on. So is all very esoteric, but it wasn't esoteric because the subject was somehow occult-like. It was hidden because if he had been exposed, he would have, at the very least, lost his job at Cambridge. At very worst, he'd have been executed. But his public persona was very rational, scientific, based on rationality, this Greek attitude, you call it. So there's a similarity there with Newton, even though it's not quite what you're talking about.
Yeah, but at the same time, he wrote many books about like he had occult studies, and he was interested in Rosicrucianism and so on.
Well, I didn't know that actually. So you taught me something there. That's interesting.
Yeah, okay. You just write about Newton and occult studies, and you will see that that he was
Well,
interested
in that case, he's probably one of the most famous examples in England.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Western esotericism, a very short history. I will speak about the late antiquity, Middle Ages, Renaissance, Enlightenment, and the 19th and the 20th century, inshallah ta'ala. First of all, Western esotericism during late antiquity. When scholars mention Western esotericism, they said that it really started during the Hellenistic culture. The Hellenistic culture was like a mixed culture between Greek philosophy and different indigenous religious traditions, especially from Egypt, but also from Persia and so on. So the Greek philosophical tradition was mixed together with these religious traditions, especially Platonism. So Platonism was transformed during the Hellenistic era into a religious worldview, and it focused on attainment of salvational gnosis. So they took some of the Platonic ideas that he had, and they made it to religious worldview. And this is something that we can see in Hermetism and also in Gnosticism, that they took some of the ideas from Plato and they mixed them with other things from old Egyptian religion and other religious traditions. So one of the famous traditions was Hermetism, and it was attributed to someone called Hermes Trismegistus. He was it was just a legendary person, but there are many books ascribed to him, especially a book that's called Corpus Hermeticum in the 2nd or 3rd century CE. So you can see that his tradition has been mentioned and has been revived, and you can see that until today, many of the secret societies or the esoteric societies, they take things from Hermes Trismegistus, or they ascribe things to him. And when Christianity started, there were some Christian sects, the Gnostics, that were declared as heretics by the church fathers, and many of their manuscripts were found in Nag Hammadi. And when they found their different books and so on, they could get an insight to the world of the Gnostics in the 2nd, 3rd century and so on. And they were also part of the Western esoteric tradition. When they tried to find salvation through Gnosis, they said that they were entrapped in a dark world, and this was something that comes from inside of you, to find the light inside of you through Gnosis, through some kind of sacred knowledge. Probably you know more about Gnosticism.
No, it's just the word Gnostic in English comes from the Greek word we have the Greek equivalent, meaning knowledge. That's what the word means. It literally means knowledge. The word Gnostic, and so it's this secret knowledge that you attain, and that's your way to salvation in some way. Yeah.
You can also see that many Gnostic elements can be found in different esoteric groups throughout the Renaissance and later days and so on. And then you had the Neoplatonists that practice theology, divine magic, when they tried to invoke the deities to find some kind of unity with them. So this is another form. They had this kind of magic, and they had ritual magic. So there are different kinds of magic, but this is one form of magic that they had and that they practiced, and they were also part of the Western esoteric tradition. So you can see that many later esoterics, they go back to the Neoplatonist tradition. Like I say, it's just a very short presentation to go through to get some kind of understanding of Western esotericism. During the Middle Ages, the esoteric traditions, especially like Neoplatonism and Gnosticism, were pushed back by the church because the church fathers were very polemical when it came to Neoplatonism and when it came to Gnosticism and so on. But many of the books from the Hellenistic era were kept in the Islamic world and translated to Arabic. So it's famous that many of the many of the philosophical books were translated to Arabic from Greek, but also many esoteric books were translated. So magic, astrology, and all of these occult sciences were translated to Arabic and kept in Arabic, and then it was translated to Latin during the later parts of the Middle Ages. And one of the traditions that grew up during the Middle Ages was Kabbalah. And Kabbalah is part of the Jewish esoteric tradition. They themselves, they claim that it's much older than that, but scholars, they usually say that it started in Spain during the 12th century. But Kabbalah was like an intermediate between the esoteric tradition that was translated in the Islamic world to come to Europe after that. So Kabbalists, Jewish Kabbalists, they came when the Christians took over Spain, and also when they took over, they moved to Italy and so on. They brought with them this whole esoteric tradition that has been mixed with old thoughts from the Hellenistic era with some Jewish theology and so on. So the Jews, the Kabbalistic Jews, they were the ones that brought the esoteric tradition to the West after it had been repressed during the Middle Ages. And many books were translated from Arabic to Latin after the fall of Toledo in Spain, 1085. So many of the philosophical works and scientific works and so on, but also some of the esoteric books were translated to Latin during that time. Another organization that was very influential when it comes to the esoteric tradition were the Knights Templar. They were very influential during the Crusades, and they ruled the banking system that they had during those days for about 200 years, and they were fighting over there in Palestine. But when they came back after they failed in the Crusades, they were repressed by King Philip IV in 1307. And part of the accusations that they were accused of was that they were indulged in different esoteric and occult practices when they were over there in Jerusalem, and were over there in the Muslim world and so on. They were accused of different things, but these are some of the things. And you can see,
I think they got into trouble with the Inquisition over their alleged activities there. It was one of the excuses or reasons to attack them or even suppress them later on. Yeah. Their alleged.
It was based on political agendas and so on. But the accusation that was raised against them was that they were indulged in occult and esoteric practices. And you can see that many of the esoteric societies or the secret societies, they use different symbols of the Knights Templar. So you can see, like in Freemasonry, that many different symbols from the Knights Templar, or even like they have some grades that are based on the Knights Templar. So, and you can even find that some some people who write history of the Freemasons themselves, they say that the Freemason came from the Knights Templar, even though other historians, they say that this is not historical. It's like a very big gap between that time and so on. It's very hard to know history, but we can see that these societies, they take many of the symbols and other things from the Knights Templar. So there is some kind of link there, even though it's only in their imagination. You can see, like the Freemasons of Sweden, their symbol is the same cross, the red cross, that is the red cross of the Knights Templar. This is their symbol that they have on their buildings and so on.
Really?
Yeah, you can even see like pictures of them. They're dressing up when they're going to their rituals and so on. They're dressing up as Knights Templars, like that, wearing the suits and so on. So they are ascribing themselves to the Knights Templar. is it really this connection? Can I go back to them? That's another thing. It's very hard to know, but it's in their imagination.
Yes. Well, what I like is number 2 there. You put the Kabbalah is thought to have started in Spain during the 12th century. Of course, Spain didn't exist then. We're talking about Islamic Spain. This is during the time of Islam. And the main text of the Kabbalah is still very popular. The Zohar, Zohar, is the main source book of the Kabbalah. And that was produced in Islamic Spain by Jews. And, some have said it's heavily influenced by Sufism, actually. So there might indirectly be an Islamic influence on Jewish mysticism in a text, which is still the central text of Jewish mystical tradition today. Very popular in America and elsewhere. So the connection to Islam and Jewish mysticism are there in Muslim Spain in the 12th century.
Definitely, because the Muslims were the one that translated these books, and you can see that was like with all of the books that was translated from the Hellenistic era, books of science and books of philosophy and so on. Usually Muslims, when they translated, they added other things to them. So you have like philosophical books that were translated from Aristotle and from Plato and so on. And then you can see that some Muslim philosophers, they would like adding explanations and so on to these books. Yeah. And the same things with science, and they developed the science, and the same thing when it comes to the esoteric tradition, that they developed it in different ways. So there is probably some kind of influence there. Yeah. Then during the Renaissance thinkers, they admired Roman culture and also Platonism. You can see that many of the Christian thinkers, they used to admire Aristotle during the Middle Ages and so on. But now they went to admire Platonism and took some of the ideas of Plato. And Hermetic and Neoplatonist thoughts were spread. The books of Hermes, the Hermetic books were translated to Latin. They were in Greek before, they were translated. And some Christian theologians, they took Jewish Kabbalah and tried to apply it to Christian theology. So what is called Christian Kabbalah appeared during the Renaissance. So there's some kind of mixture there. And this is also a very important part of the mystic and esoteric tradition in the West. Giordano Bruno, he was a monk actually, and he was also astronomer, and he aided Copernicus and his ideas of heliocentrism, but he was executed. He was executed because of his indulgence in esoteric thoughts and magic. Yeah. But today, when they speak about Bruno, they usually said that he was executed because of his he was a scientific hero and so on. So they try to always try to scenario that the church or the religion is always against science and so on. But Bruno, he was actually executed for his indulgence in esoteric thought and magic and these kind of things.
But it's interesting, he was known, he proposed the idea that stars were distant suns surrounded by their own planets or exoplanets. And he raised the possibility that these planets might actually foster life of their own. So the idea that these are own solar systems or own systems that might have alien life. This is a very advanced and heretical idea for medieval Christians anyway.
Another thing that happened during that was called the Rosicrucian Manifestos. They appeared in Germany during 1614. And this is ascribed to a person that also will come back to the Islamic tradition. A person that is a legendary person that went to, I think, Cairo and Fez in Morocco. And he brought many of the Sufi ideas back and then spread them in this Rosicrucian idea. You can see, I think that Newton was himself a Rosicrucian, so he was affected of these ideas. So so this is like the beginning when they started societies with rituals and initiations in the beginning of the 17th centuries. They said that these manifestos were forged and so on, but this is the beginning when they start these societies, that they have these rituals, and the Rosicrucian movement, they influenced Freemasonry after that during the 18th century. Yeah, so this is during the Renaissance and Reformation. And during the Enlightenment is cherished as the age of reason and science, but there's another side of that. You can see that many of the scholars and also thinkers during that period of time, they were indulged in the occult and joined different secret societies. So you can see that many of the famous philosophers in France, they were Freemasons, and they were indulged in different esoteric things and so on. But at the same time, they were very much against religion. So they were speaking in public about rationality and rational thinking and so on. But at the same time, they joined these secret societies that had these different esoteric rituals. Yeah. And the first Grand Lodge of Freemasonry was established in London, 1717. Even though Freemasonry is older than that, but the Grand Lodge was established on that year. Even though some say that this is just symbolic, that specific year, but sometime during that period of time, Freemasonry was established in London. It became very, very popular quickly, and it spread during the 18th century to France and to Sweden and to the USA, to America. It became USA after that. We can see that the founding fathers of America, many of them were Freemasons. And also the Illuminati was established during that time. This is what is called the Bavarian Illuminati. And Illuminati, it started like 1776 by a person called Adam Weishaupt. He himself was very, he liked to study Jewish Kabbalah and these kind of occult and esoteric things. But he said that his mission was to fight Christianity and to replace it with rational thinking and so on. So he had one side of like speaking about making revolutions and calling to revolutions against the kings and against the church and so on. But at the same time, he had his own secret society with different esoteric teachings and things like that. And the Bavarian Illuminati only continued for about 10 years or something like that. Many famous people in Germany and other places joined this secret society. But then the leader of the state of Bavaria abolished the whole, when he found out that they have these revolutionary ideas and so on, he abolished the whole movement, and Adam Weishaupt had to flee to another state of the Germanic states. But
1776, of course, is celebrated in the US as the official beginning of the United States, the Declaration of Independence. So I was wondering if that's a coincidence, is it, that that's the same year?
Yeah, it's quite interesting. And he started the movement on the 1st May also. Like, 1st May, as you know, it's like, it's a day.
Yeah.
Interesting. So, yeah, but the Illuminati, after that, officially it was finished, but it became very, very popular in popular culture. People are speaking about like different. Usually, when people speak about conspiracy theories, they speak about the Illuminati. Yeah. And the thing that is quite interesting is that most people, they don't have an idea. They just what Illuminati is. They're just using it as a word, like some people say the Matrix today. Like, try to use some kind of word for the. I don't really know, those who rule everything. But Illuminati was really a secret society that was established 1776, and you can read scholarly articles. Even Adam Weishaupt's books now has been translated. Some of them have been translated to English. They were written in German, but they have been translated now to English. You can see the kind of thoughts that he had, and that was spread in these secret societies in in that time.
Is the Illuminati, the Illuminati that exists today, if it does exist, is this in direct continuity with this place, this group that was established in 1776, or is it a completely different thing?
Yeah, they say that like he recruited people from different states, from Poland, and even some people from Sweden and so on. And then the organization was disabled in his state where he was from Bavaria. But the people that speak about Illuminati, like in conspiracy circles and so on, they say that the organization continued to live on in different places. So some say they attribute like that he was involved in the French Revolution, and he was also involved in things that happened in the USA and so on. But it's many of the things that have been mentioned is not really historical. So we don't have clear historical proof for the things that happen. And they started to use the word Illuminati for all kinds of things that are just bad and evil. Yeah.
I see.
But there were people that really like joined the movement. You have the famous German author Goethe. He was a member of Illuminati. Yeah, he was a member. Yeah.
No idea. Because interesting, he wrote the Dr. Faustus. You know, this idea of this. Well, I won't go into that, but the idea of having a pact with the devil and giving you amazing powers is all very esoteric and kind of weird. And that kind of
even Frankenstein, the book Frankenstein, Adam Weishaupt was from the city Ingolstadt in Bavaria. So she mentions that Frankenstein was made in Ingolstadt. So there is some kind of connection there too. That they say that she kind of got some of the thoughts from the Illuminati. I don't really know. I haven't been reading too much. So this was what happened during the Enlightenment, and like I said, Freemasonry spread very much. It spread to Sweden. You can see that the first kings in Sweden that became Freemasons were in like 1750 or something like that, and all of the kings in Sweden until this king that we have all been Freemasons.
But why are the kings of Sweden Freemasons? I mean, why would they become part of this movement, of this order? What would be their incentive, do you think?
It's very hard to know. Was one of the kings of Sweden. Like Freemasons, they have different rites. So you have the Scottish rite and you have the Swedish rite. Swedish rite is spread in the Scandinavian countries, Sweden, and in Norway and Denmark and Iceland. It's the same rite. And you have the York rite. You have different rites. And you have in France, they have their own way. So it can differ from place to place. But the Swedish rite was established. It started in the 1750s or something like that, 1730s maybe, and then the one that the person that established the Swedish rite was the King Charles XIII of Sweden. So he was the king, and he was the one that established the whole rite that we have in Sweden until today, and in Denmark and Norway and so on. And he was very much into the esoteric and the occult and getting in contact with spirits and so on. So he was very much indulged in these kind of things. And when I asked the scholar Henrik Bogdan in one of my classes about the Swedish rite, is it more esoteric or less esoteric than other rites? He said it's more esoteric. And there are no books that are public of the Swedish Freemasonry. You have books of like the Scottish Rite in America and so on that are public. You can read them. You can buy them from Amazon and so on. But there are no books that are public of Swedish Freemasonry. So it's very hard to know really what they're up to, what they're doing, and so on. And this is what he himself said. And he's like one of the main scholars in the world. He's a professor. Is one of the main scholars in the world when it comes to studying Western esotericism.
But this must be a cause of some considerable anxiety to those non-Freemason people in Scandinavia who are aware of this secretive movement of some rich and powerful people, because what are they up to? The implication is there's conspiracies, there's unaccountability, there's agendas which are not made public and therefore not accountable to a wider political system. So this must cause anxiety, surely, politically and socially, amongst other people.
Yes, and I will come to that, inshallah, later. This is like what I'm speaking about, the two different sides of the West. You have this open, the modern side of the West, and democratic side, and liberal side, and the same people that are ruling are in these secret societies that are very, like, they're not egalitarian, they do not allow women to come in and so on. But I will speak about that later. I think it's a very, very interesting thing when it comes to understanding the West. You can't really understand the whole West if you don't understand Western esotericism. This is
Indeed.
So during the 19th century, there was a movement called spiritualism that attracted millions of followers, especially in America and in Britain. It started with two sisters that heard some sounds in their house, and they thought that they were communicating with the dead. So this was during the period of time after the American Civil War. Many people died during the war, and they died of diseases and so on. So like almost all families in the States, they had some relatives that have been dead. So now, and people started to move in to bigger cities and so on. So many of them lost connections to churches and so on, to the old churches. And this was some kind of way to find a substitute of to continue with their spiritual life. And one of the main things the spiritualists were focused on was communicating with the dead. So they have spiritual mediums that were speaking to the dead and communicating with them and so on. But probably some kind of jinn thing that they had connection to.
Yeah.
But this was very, very popular between 1840 to 1920 in USA and Britain.
Very popular in English, as you say, hugely popular in Victorian England, and it got a lot of criticism, but it was very, very popular. It was remarkable. Not anymore. It's almost does not disappeared, I guess, but it certainly doesn't have that kind of central cultural significance that it did in a few centuries ago.
And one of the movements that was like influence of that was the Theosophical Society, established by Helena Blavatsky in 1875. And one of the things that is interesting with the Theosophical Society, that Helena Blavatsky, she said herself that she traveled to Tibet, and she traveled to India, and she traveled to Egypt and so on. And many of the thoughts that she had and many of the things that she had in the Theosophical Society were taken from Buddhism and taken from Hinduism and taken from old Egyptian religion and so on. And the Theosophical Society itself was not that big, but it had huge influence on the New Age movement after that, and other movements that are popular in the West now. So you can see that in these New Age movements and people that are indulged in these things, they usually take some things from Buddhism, some things from Hinduism, some things from Taoism, and so on. So they mix from different religious traditions, and they call it like you go to a buffet, so you take what you want. So this is something that it's very individualistic in this way, that you should not have this organized religion that like the church is saying to you exactly what you should believe and so on. It's up to everyone to take what they want. So you can take some things, take the tarot card, so you take some astrology things and so on. So this is part of the whole New Age movement, and many of the things can be traced back to Helena Blavatsky and the Theosophical Society.
It's a kind of spiritual practice which is very modern in the sense of it's very capitalistic. It's like having a supermarket of beliefs. So you choose whatever you fancy and what takes you, what you like, and it's very individualistic and capitalistic.
They sell things to you, capitalistic, like you say. They try to like sell stones to you, sell talismans to you.
Extremist, whatever you feel like. It's very zeitgeist, very Western in that sense.
But it's very interesting to understand this, to understand, like, because it's you can see, especially in subhanAllah, amongst women, it's much more like spread out amongst women than it is amongst men. So you can see when I was studying atheism, I saw like a YouTube channel that have been that collected all of the debates between Christians and atheists. So it was about 300 debates that I saw. That was many years ago, and all of the debates were between men. So men who are atheists and men who are Christians. And then I wrote an essay, an article when I was studying about the New Age movement at a university in Sweden. And I had to read some of the materials that they have, some of the journals that they have, and newspapers and so on. And the whole movement was for women. So they were speaking about, okay, how can you practice your spiritual life, and how can you be happy with your husband? So it's not like with your wife, it was with your husband. You can see that many of them that practice this are usually like women. So you can see that men they like are more attracted to things like either like atheism and so on, and then you can see that women they're more attracted to these things. One thing that's interesting during the 19th century, that many socialists and feminists, they used Satan as a symbol. So they were praising Shaitan, actually. And you can see that there's a book called Marx and Satan, or Satan or Marx. And the author, he collected different poems by Marx himself that he like wrote to Shaitan and praised Shaitan. And you can see the same thing with what is it called? Mikhail Bakunin, the anarchist leader.
Bukharin, the Russian Bukharin.
Yeah, the same thing with him. He had this kind of praising Shaitan and so on. And even the Social Democratic Party in Sweden, they had their own newspaper called Lucifer. And this is the Social Democratic Party that has been ruling Sweden for like most of the 20th century. So they had
the Social Democratic Party, who's been ruling Sweden for the most of the 20th century, had a paper that was named after Satan. That's what you just said. Right. Okay.
Yeah. And they had the 10 commandments of Shaitan. So it said like, you should not have any God besides me, the light bringer. So they had this tradition that was very spread out among socialists during the 19th century, when they used Shaitan as a rebel against authority, against God, against the king, and so on. And feminists was the same thing, that they say that they used the story of Adam and Eve, that Shaitan came to her and so on, and that the church used to have this whole patriarchal structure and so on, but Shaitan was the one that tried to liberate women those days. There's a Swedish scholar, it's called Per Faxnell. He wrote a book, I think it's his PhD dissertation, about satanic feminism. Satanic feminism, Satan, the devil as the liberator of women during the 19th century and so on. So there were many feminists during that period of time were influenced of Satanism. But some of them, they said that, some scholars, they have mentioned that not all of them were esoteric Satanists. So they were not all of them believing in Shaitan as a figure that they worshipped. They used him as a symbol, usually. So, but still, these kind of esoteric thoughts were spread out even amongst the secular movements during the 19th century. During the 20th century, there's a very famous person called Aleister Crowley. He was actually
English guy.
He was a Freemason, and he was also, he started his own esoteric religion called Thelema. And it was based on magic and other esoteric and occult things and so on. And he was very influential. He was even mentioned, I think, by BBC, that he was one of the most influential Englishmen ever. So he's like on the list. I think even Beatles, they put his picture on one of their albums.
Oh yes, yeah, they did. Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Also, the German Nazi Party had occult roots, and also you can see Heinrich Himmler. He was himself very indulged in these things. So he used to have different occult and esoteric meetings in a palace in Germany, and many of the things that he was like, he was the SS leader, but at the same time he used to have all of these esoteric rituals and so on, and many others also from the Nazi Party. So there are some specific books about the occult roots of the Nazi Party. You can see that many of the symbols that they use and many of the things that they have can all be traced back to different esoteric symbolism and so on.
Mm-hmm.
After the Second World War, the counterculture movement spread during the 1960s, and they were against the establishment. And being against the establishment, one part was being against religion. The New Age movement became very popular amongst them during the 60s, the 70s, and so on. So many esoteric beliefs were spread amongst these people. Then the word New Age did not become so popular. So you will not see today usually the people that are indulged in these things, that have these practices, that they say that they are part of a New Age movement today. But these things are really spread out. You can see them like on the internet. You can see them in personal development books, that they usually use these kind of ideas taken from New Age thought and so on. So they are very spread out, but they don't usually use the word New Age anymore. Even neo-paganism was spread during the late 20th century all around Europe. You have in the UK the Wicca and Druid movement, and you have in Eastern Europe like Slavic neo-paganism. We have in Sweden the Old Norse religions, some kind of neo-paganism, and you can usually see that people that are on the far right, they have these kind of symbols from the neo-pagan or the old pagan religions in Scandinavia and so on. And also satanic groups started. They have the Church of Satan that started in the 70s and so on. They never gained much popularity, but you can see a lot of reference to the devil and shaitan in Western culture.
Yeah, in music particularly.
If you go in here, of course, Wikipedia is not the best place to have the resource, but if you go into Wikipedia and write devil in the arts and popular culture, you will see under all these things like music, classical music, popular music, film, television, animation, radio, literature, video games, and so on, how many references there are to the devil in music, in film, and so on. It's not always that they praise the devil. There are some examples of other than that, but in music, especially, they have this thing that they're saying that they have a deal with the devil, that they sold the soul to the devil, and so on. And these are things that they say during they have these lyrics that are very satanic in Western culture. You can even see in many films too, many series, video games, and all these things. They have these occult things and esoteric things that get into video games and to music and to films and series and so on. And this is very interesting. And there's a specific subject that they study called occulture, where they study this culture phenomena in the West.
It's interesting. There's even in the Muslim world, there's a certain Muslim country, I won't say where a Western singer went just a few weeks ago, and the lyrics were quite well known about bowing down to worship the goddess and so on. And this is explicitly kind of pagan, satanic kind of rhetoric going on there, even in a Muslim country. So I won't say which one, but it's infiltrating through popular music now in other parts of the world, not just the West.
Yeah, you see, even famous music videos that they have speaking about how they sold the soul to the devil and how the devil coming into the music videos and so on. So, devil and esoteric thoughts are very spread out in Western culture today. This is another thing that I think is very interesting. the esoteric tradition in Freemasonry. So the first gentleman there is called Albert Pike. He got a book called Morals and Dogma. And he was the supreme commander of the Scottish Rite, which is the biggest rite in USA, for about 20 or 30 years or something like that. So he was like the main boss during the 19th century for Freemasonry in the States. 33-degree Freemason. And he wrote this book, Morals and Dogma, and this book is, you can download it as a PDF and you can read it, and it's full of esoteric and occult things. And this is how he explained the different levels that they have, the different degrees that they have in Freemasonry. So if someone wants to get like an insight in how they understand the rituals, you can go back to the book Morals and Dogma. It's very hard to understand because usually esoteric literature, if you don't really understand the different the wordings that they're using or the thoughts that they have, it's quite hard to understand. But someone as Albert Pike had this huge influence amongst the Freemasons that he wrote this book with the esoteric thought. It shows us that the esoteric tradition is widespread in amongst Freemasons, especially the Scottish Rite. The other person called Manly Hall, he got a book called The Secret Teachings of All Ages. He was very influential too amongst the Freemasons. His books are very esoteric too. And he even, in one of the books that I read from him, he mentioned that the religion of Freemasonry. So he mentioned that it's an own religion. Wow. And he got all of these different, he takes like teachings from different religions, and especially he's talking about Hermeticism and Neoplatonist thoughts and all these things from old Egypt time. And he put them together in this book, Secret Teaching of All Ages, and other books that he wrote too. And the third person is King Charles XIII of Sweden, who established the Swedish or formed the Swedish Rite that we have in Sweden and Denmark and Norway and Iceland. And like I said, when I spoke to my teacher, he said that his thoughts were even more esoteric than other rites that they have in Freemasonry. So you have this esoteric tradition in Freemasonry. It's very hard to know exactly what they believe in, exactly what they do, what their rituals consist of. But there are books that you can read, and there are also academic research about them, so you can understand more what they believe and what they do. And here is something that is very, very interesting. You have these esoteric thoughts. And I don't know if it's so clear, but let's see if I can make it bigger here. Yeah. So they have this initial rite when you join the Freemasons, and this is taken from themselves, what they say. So they say that they have to obey without hesitation any order whatsoever it may be of Masonic superiors, to assist a companion royal archmason when he is engaged in any difficulty and espouse his cause so far as to extricate him from the same, whether he is right or wrong. And then they say, they give this oath that if they would reveal any of the secrets, that he will have his throat cut from ear to ear, his tongue torn out by the roots, and his body buried in the rough sand of the sea at the lower water mark when the tide flows twice in the same 24 hours.
That's a very exquisite thing, isn't it? I mean, it's a really, and you wonder, if he's, what the point of all that is. I think it's very theatrical, isn't it? It's kind of very, I think it's hard to take this seriously, to be honest.
But still, you say these things, and you say that you have to obey your Masonic superior and so on, and to have his skull severed in two and divided to the north and the south, and his bowel burned to ashes in the midst and scattered in the four winds and heavens, and his skull broke and so on. And they say these things. So this is what I want to come to. These are societies that they have esoteric thoughts, and they give this bay'ah, like oath of allegiance to the Masonic leaders. And then at the same time, you see, okay, who are famous Freemasons in the Western world? You see George Washington, you see Benjamin Franklin, Franklin D. Roosevelt, Andrew Jackson, Harry D. Truman, Mozart, Andrew Johnson, Mark Twain, Winston Churchill, Henry Ford, Gerald Ford, and so on. So many American presidents, famous people in culture, famous writers, politicians, J. Edgar Hoover, who actually like more or less controlled American politicians during much of the 20th century. So, and they are in these societies, and everything is so secret and esoteric, and they swear these oaths and so on. So
I can't help thinking, if I may just comment on this, the two names there that strike me: the Reverend Jesse Jackson, the famous civil rights leader, who's still with us, I think, and Henry Ford. And Henry Ford, of course, was an open anti-Semite. He supported the Nazi Party. Hitler awarded him some medals. He was a well-known National Socialist sympathizer. So I'm just wondering, in the hierarchy of the Freemasons, the relative, because perhaps their lives didn't quite overlap, but it'd been interesting if Jesse Jackson would have been higher in the hierarchy than Henry Ford, and it had to have obeyed a black man, a Nazi obeying a black man. That would have been ironic, to put it mildly. But it's a very eclectic, diverse bunch of people, actually. Winston Churchill, how extraordinary.
Yeah. But the thing is, like, I think this is one of the main reasons why so many conspiracy theories are made about the Freemasons and other secret societies and so on, because people see, okay, there are many famous people here. They are indulging in rituals that are very shady, esoteric. We don't know about them, what they're doing, what they're saying, what they're joining one another, and so on. And at the same time, they are, like I said, they're secretive, and they give this oath to the leaders and so on. So if you have an open, democratic, liberal society, and at the same time you have these things going on, it's very hard to kind of join these things together, to be honest.
I think, is there only one person from that long list who's still alive today? But Buzz Aldrin, the American astronaut, second on the moon, Buzz Aldrin, rather.
No, this is just some, about 6 million Freemasons in the world.
I'm just wondering. I'm just saying. I wonder what those who are alive now, who are the famous Freemasons in the Western world who still exist.
In Sweden we have the foreign minister, we have the spokesman of the parliament, and so on. So we have many famous, high-ranked politicians in.
Oh, I see. I didn't know. Okay.
So this is quite interesting. This is the fresco of the Capitol, United States Capitol, and this is what is called apotheosis of Washington.
Yeah.
And you know what apotheosis is?
Yeah, apotheosis means it means when someone is exalted into heaven and become divine. It's a word sometimes used to describe the Christian view of Jesus, who became divine when he ascended into heaven.
Yeah. And this is a part of the fresco of United States Capitol Hill. So this is like where the parliament is and so on. They have this fresco of him making some kind of apotheosis, like he's becoming divine and so on. And this is also a part of their esoteric beliefs, that they're becoming divine with their esoteric thoughts and so on. And it's quite interesting that they have these things in these pictures and these places. So this is what I think is very interesting. How the West presents itself. It's modern, it's rational, it's materialistic, it's egalitarian, it's democratic, and so on. This is like how they usually portray themselves, and how many Muslims also in other parts of the world they think about, when they think about the West, this is how they think about them. But you can see at the same time, the esoteric secret societies are based on tradition. So they take this knowledge that is from tradition, from master to master and so on, and it's take it from them. And it's not based on rational thinking. It's very irrational, to be honest, to have these rituals that they go into coffins, and they go amongst the different skulls, and they do this kind of things that they're not part of rational thinking, and they have these occult elements in them too. They are hierarchical and excludes women too. So if you say that we have like egalitarian, it's like women and men, they can have all the same rights. At the same time, you have these societies, you have these organizations that have a lot of influence. At the same time, they exclude women. So I think this is also very interesting. And they are elitists and based on obedience. So the lower one obeys the one who is over him, and so on to his masters. And this is also like in a democratic society, it's very hard to see how you can join between these things at the same time.
Indeed, absolutely.
So what I think is very important with these things is that some people, they ignore the existence of these secret esoteric societies, so they don't care about them, or they even deny that they exist or like that. And other people, they spread conspiracies. And the problem with conspiracy theories is that they're usually not based on knowledge. So they might have like some sense of knowledge. They have 1, 2, 3, and then they jump from there to 45. So there's like a big gap between the things that they have, the knowledge that they have, and what they are talking about. And usually when you can see that people speak about esotericism, the occult, and these secret societies and so on YouTube and like in some popular books and so on, it's usually based on these conspiracies. It's not knowledge-based. And the study of esotericism has been ignored in the academia for a very long period of time too. So if you go back 30, 40 years ago, you will not find academic books and research and articles about these organizations. But today, you have these academic books that go back to resources, that go back to first-hand sources, and they go back to the books of these organizations and so on. And also some of the esoteric books are available, so you can find them on the net, and you can buy them on Amazon and so on. Maybe like 45, 50 years ago, someone who was not in these organizations would not get his hand on these books. But today, it's possible to read the books and to get more understanding of their thought and what they're all about and so on. So I think this is very important that we as Muslims, or people, human beings generally, when you speak about anything, even if it's people that you don't agree with, you should speak with knowledge. You should not speak just about what you think it might be and so on. So if you say something, if you say something, okay, they believe in this and this and that. Okay, what's your evidence for that? What do you base it on? You know, they said in, Albert Pike said in Morals and Dogma 1, 2, 3, okay, now we have an evidence. But just saying things and ascribing things to people, it's not from Islamic manners, even if it's people that you don't agree with. And it's the same thing with other religions, where like Muslims can't speak about Christians and Jews and Hindus and so on without knowledge, without evidence, what they say. This is
a very important point, I must say. Very good point.
Yeah, so this is also one of the things that I wanted to reach with this presentation, to the importance that if you want to learn about these things, learn from real resources. Don't like look at TikTok videos about things or YouTube celebrities and so on. Try to really gain real knowledge, or if you don't, it's better to just leave it and don't speak about it. So yeah, these are some of the books that have been written about the subject. The first scholar in the West that was famous to write books about the subject was a French scholar called Anthony Faivre. I don't know how to pronounce French names, but yeah. He wrote many books. He got a chair of studying esoteric thought in the University of Sorbonne. And this is one of his books, Western Esotericism, A Concise History. And he got many other books too. And there's another scholar called Wouter Hanegraaff. He's from Holland, the Netherlands. He got many books about the subject too. One of them is a short book, about 200 pages, called Western Esotericism, A Guide for the Perplexed. Walter Hanegraaff and also Antoine Ferret and other scholars, they wrote a dictionary of Gnosis and Western Esotericism. I think it's about 800 to 900 pages. It's a big book that explains all of the words that they're using and vocabulary and so on, because it can be very hard to understand. So if someone would just order Morals and Dogma of Albert Pike and try to read it straight away, he would probably not understand so much. So this is a book that can help you to understand the kind of terminology that they're using in Western Esotericism. They also got a journal called Aries with peer-reviewed articles about Western Esotericism with many different scholars from different universities that write articles about that. And this is also a book called Handbook of Freemasonry by Henrik Bogdan, who's the teacher that I studied with. It's about 600 or 700 pages with different scholars who wrote a book about Freemasonry in different countries.
600 to 700 pages on Freemasonry. I mean, that just shows there's a massive subject and there's that much material to cover in a big volume like that. Extraordinary.
So this is what I want to reach. Like, if someone wants to speak about this subject, okay, learn what it's really all about. Don't just speak about these things. Don't just make a YouTube video so you can get a lot of people looking at it and so on, because these are serious.
Well, of course, this is talking theology and it's you giving the lecture, in which case they must watch a YouTube video if you're giving the lecture about it on YouTube. Yeah.
So these are some of the books, and there are many books and articles about the subject, and they can be downloaded. Some of the PDFs.
Oh, really?
And you can also buy them from Amazon and so on. So if someone wants to learn more, you can go back to these books and learn more about the subject. The last thing that I want to speak about before ending is the Islamic rulings on esotericism and occultism. So many of the things that they're doing, like sihr, magic, is the ruling in Islam is that it's kufr and shirk, because you can't make sihr or sorcery without getting connected to have contact with jinn. So they're calling upon jinn, and they're usually making different kinds of kufr to get closer to them, so they can get the things that they want. So this is to learn about magic, how to do it, how to get in contact with the jinn, is a form of kufr that the scholars have mentioned. So it's a very serious thing. Divination, kahana, that you try to know the future by looking in like a lamp, or looking in different things, or to go to some persons that they say that they know the future and so on. This is also a form of kufr. The Prophet ﷺ mentioned the two different situations, that if a person goes to a person that claims to know the future, and he believes that he said فَقَدْ كَفَرَ بِمَا أُنزِلَ عَلَى مُحَمَّدٍ, then he made kufr. So he left the religion of Islam. If he believes that this specific person knows the future, he knows al-ghayb, what will happen in the future, and if he just goes to him just to ask him, and he does not really believe that he said, the Prophet ﷺ said that his prayer will not be accepted for 40 days.
Wow.
And this is very dangerous, because you can see that some Muslims, they are looking at these TV shows, or that they are reading newspapers that have this kind of divination articles and so on, and they believe in them, or they do not believe in them, they just read them for fun. Then this is very serious in Islam. The same thing with astrology, and this is very popular. And now divination, they have these tarot cards, and it comes in different ways, and it's spread out like in the Muslim world in some ways, and in the Western world in other ways, and so on. But it all comes back to people that claim that they know the future based on that they just lying, or that they have contact with the jinn in different ways. Same thing with astrology too. If someone believes that the stars, they can affect what will happen on Earth by themselves. So if someone is born in the Scorpion or something like that, this and this and this and that will happen to him, and this is because of the stars themselves. Then this is a big form of kufr in Islam. And if the person believes that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made this as a sabab, a reason that this will happen, then this is a lesser form of kufr. But it's still very, very serious to believe in these things, or read like astrological papers and so on. Because you can see, like, in many newspapers in the West today, especially like the newspapers that try to sell as much as possible, not really serious and so on, they usually have these astrological articles and so on. They're very, very common in newspapers today in the West.
Yeah, very true.
Also, talismans, different tamima that they have, they're very common in the Muslim world, but usually in the New Age movement and so on, they have these different talismans that they wear, or that they have in their houses and so on. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam spoke about that too, that man ta'allaqa tamimatan faqad kafar, that if someone wears a tamima, then this is a form of kufr. So this is also very, very serious in Islam. Spiritualism, getting in contact with the dead, asking them for help, and usually the ones that they communicate with are usually some kind of jinn or like that. This can also be a form of kufr or shirk, that they start to ask them for specific things, that they make different rituals to them and so on, so they fall into kufr or to shirk, or that they make dua to someone else than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This can also be shirk. When it comes to joining these esoteric societies, especially if someone knows what they're all about, and they have these esoteric teachings that goes against Islam, this is something that scholars have been talking about too, and they say that it's not allowed for a Muslim to do that in any ways. So for a Muslim to join these societies, secret societies and so on, it's not allowed. And usually when they get involved in these things, they will have to do something that is totally contrary to Islam. But at the same time, you can see, like, there's some books that have been written about Freemasonry in the Islamic world, and it was really, really spread out in the Islamic world, especially when the French, they came to Egypt. One of the first things that they made when Napoleon and his generals, many of the generals with Napoleon, they were Freemasons, so they established these lodges in Egypt, and some Muslims, they joined these organizations in lodges in Egypt. So you can see that many of the kings in Egypt during the 19th century and the beginning of the 20th century, they were Freemasons. The same things with in Syria and Lebanon and Turkey and so on. Freemason was very widespread in these countries, and the scholars have mentioned that joining these organizations is not allowed, and it can also lead a person to do things that are totally contrary to Islam. Yeah, so this is some summary of this important subject. It's a lot of things that you can speak about. I was thinking a lot about what to bring up and not to bring up. So if I want to speak about everything, it will be too long. But this is kind of a summary about the subject, so you can get some summarized version about it. If someone wants to read more, there are many books they can go back to and to learn more about this.
I think the one question I have, really, as I say, a complete novice to this, really, is you've spoken about these esoteric societies like the Freemasons, the Illuminati, and so on. Is the extent of their actual power and influence in practice in our world, but because they are esoteric by definition, we can't look at them, they're secretive. So, but then you've listed all these very powerful people who think it worth their while in their busy lives, where it matters really what they bother to get involved in. Why would they bother getting involved in say, the Freemasons, if it was just a joke, if it was, just a pantomime where people dressed up in funny clothes and did funny rituals with coffins and whatever, like you said. So that suggests that there is a point to joining it. So that raises the question, well, how efficacious is it? What is the purpose? Why do powerful people join these organizations, particularly the Freemasons? Because that seems to be the one that gets mentioned here.
It's the one that I mentioned, and then others. Yeah.
So what's your view on that? Are we dealing with a behind-the-scenes occult influence here that is parallel to, it seems to be what you're saying, runs parallel to the official constitution, rules, regulations, processes of a democratic liberal polity? Are we dealing with a kind of a twin track reality here? Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, I think so. I think people are joining the organizations. Like they have 6 million members, and they have many other organizations too. So Sweden, which is a famous country for being this open, liberal country, is the country with most people per capita in secret societies and secret organizations. And Freemasons is just one of them. So you have another organization called Odd Fellow. So you have Templar Order. It's an organization with the same name of Knights Templars. And you have many other organizations too that are secretive, and they are even bigger than the Freemasons. So this is just one of the examples that I mentioned. So we can see, like Winston Churchill, he was with the Freemasons and the Odd Fellows at the same time. And the Odd Fellows in Sweden, I think they have about 40,000 members, and Freemasons, I think they have 15,000. So it's very hard to understand exactly why people join. I think there are different reasons for that. Some people, they join, they say that they have some kind of spiritual journey, or that they self-development and so on. This is something that they can gain from that. It might be these kind of reasons. There might be other reasons too, to get connections and with the business and the political life and workplaces and so on. There have been like different, like the media have been writing about these subjects in the UK and in Sweden, about like how the many police officers and judges and like lawyers and so on have been Freemasons. Was like just a couple of months ago in Sweden that they mentioned that, like in some cases, I think it was like the judge and the attorney and the lawyer and all of them at the same time, they're all Freemasons. So this become just sometimes
the questions are compromising the integrity of the legal process if behind the scenes people are all almost in the same organization that's not disclosed, and what's really going on there. People are, this is suspicious, isn't it? I mean, the question I got for you, I mean, is there a worldwide head of, say, the Freemasons? Is there a Mr. Freemason that has a name and an address?
Officially not, because they have different rights. So you have the Swedish rite, and they have the Master Mason in the Swedish rite, and then you have the Scottish rite, and you have the York rite, and you have different rites. So you have in the UK, they have I think it's from the royal family. I don't know exactly who it is. It's been the Master Mason for about 50 years.
Is it the Duke of Kent, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, Duke of Kent, yeah.
So okay, there are leaders, but they're regional leaders rather than a single global leader.
Yes. Because there's not one Freemason, there are Freemasonries, so different Freemasonries. But what I understood is that they have contact between one another, but they are not just one.
So they're kind of relative. Interesting.
Yeah, but I can say that I'm I have some knowledge. I've been reading a lot about it, but it's like you saw, like the books, there are a lot of literature and articles and so on about the subject. So it's much more that you can learn about the subject and so on. And like I said, there are other societies too, other esoteric groups too. So it's a very interesting subject, and I think that more people, especially if they're involved in dawah and so on, should have some knowledge about this, because this is a way of understanding the Western society today, because it's a big part of it.
Yeah, there's the outward presenting of the West image it wants to project, as you say, of liberal, rational, open, and but on the other hand, behind the scenes, there are these apparently, very well attended organizations, esoteric, hidden, with agendas. Who knows what they're up to? So this is quite disturbing, of course. And of course, from a Muslim point of view as well, these aren't just human organizations. They may well be in contact with occult powers, with jinn and shaitan, maybe, I don't know. So that they present, there could be unseen influences they bring to bear through these individuals, through these organizations on the societies around us. So there's that kind of spiritual dimension, the unseen, which is very real. Obviously, the Quran talks about it very, very extensively. This is very real. And so I think it's what you've done here today, thank you for it, is very salutary, very helpful in just to give us a more complete picture of another side of the West, of what's actually going on. And so we should be less perhaps naive about the occult powers that may be at work within our societies. And Shaitan himself, the Quran says, is an avowed enemy of mankind. So one can assume that he is at work in a hidden way, perhaps, in our societies, particularly in the West.
Yeah, and like you say, like we talked about, like in the music industry, like the things that are really influencing people at a day-to-day level, that they have all these satanic and occult things. It's quite scary to be honest. Like they're really like people that might not be so like interested in reading like philosophical books and religious books and so on. They can get affected in other ways of these occult and satanic elements through films, through music, through video games and so on. So this is something that is really real in our culture today, and people are affected of it. So yeah, I think it's something that we should study more and to get more knowledge about.
Yeah, another eminent scholar, Islamic scholar, Sheikh Hamza Yusuf from Zaytuna College, of course, has written a lot about this, and there's some interesting YouTube videos of lectures, talks that he's given, which discuss all of this in great detail. And he talks about very influential 20th century figures who are behind very important discoveries, rocket science and so on, who were avowed Satanists. This is not us calling them that. That's what they called themselves. And it really is quite shocking when you realize some of these people were Satanists. And so Hamza Yusuf has done a lot of work educating Muslims, I think, on this as well. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Dr. Abdullah Sueidi. As always, fantastic to see you. And I hope your presentation will help many people to, as you say, do dawah more effectively, more knowledgeably, to understand what's really going on in the West, and also to check themselves to make sure they don't get influenced by these, occult influences. So thank you very much indeed. Until next time.